Here we go. Welcome back, everybody. Podcast and Chill Show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for watching and tuning in and listening to the greatest podcast you've never heard
Until now.
until right now.
Welcome back, my main man, the wonderful, the amazing Christopher Bernard.
And the incredible, always insightful, and amazing Neil Quinto. What's going on, brother?
Controversial.
What's going on, bro?
Get rid. Everything's going on. Come on, man. You know that. Let's go.
Oh, let's dive in. Let's just dive in.
Yes, this is going to be a controversial one, I think, which is good. Makes for good content.
Yes.
Every week we come to you with a different subject matter. And no, this one was super interesting. In this past week, I engaged in a Zoom meeting, and it was concerning connecting with your audience using stories. And it was super awesome. I want to give credit to the speaker. His name is Doug Keeley. Terrific content. He's got a YouTube page and a myriad of different things, but he's a communication expert, storyteller mainly. Here's his YouTube page. But his main points of his presentation were, like in this day and age, using social obviously is a must in any business.
Yeah.
And we're inundated with spam and email and ads and people posting all kinds of stuff. But what really adds intrigue and makes you insightful, both entertaining and informative, someone worthy of watching is, sharing and telling stories, because everybody has a story, a narrative of their own. And who
That's right.
is your story, right?
That's right.
And some people are naturally good at it, and others refuse to share parts of their life that could very well be the most interesting part of your life, right? And I've heard of certain influencers and people online that didn't gain traction with their audiences until they shared like more personal stuff, like they got off their subject matter, and then they talked about their struggles, about basically being human.
That's right. Showing a little vulnerability.
Yes, exactly. And I think I this was right up your alley, because this is where I could use your insight, because in my mind, when I self-analyze, I'm like, what's my story? I have nothing. Like,
That is so not true. Number one.
when you think about yourself, that's the problem, is you don't think that you have a voice in that manner. You know what I mean? You don't think your story is interesting. But why are the Kardashians like, so you can't take your eyes off them? And like there's certain kids shows where all they do is like open presents and go to places and go to the park, and they're doing everyday common things, and you can't stop watching. And I feel that to be true, because in my industry, real estate, like it seems like all agents do the same thing now. And it's like, I sold this one, I sold that one, this one's coming. I'm like, no one gives a shit about that. They care, like, hey, check this place out. Like, it was haunted before, and it was like, hey, haunted. Okay, I like your attention. You know what I'm saying? If you can tell a story with each and every, let's say home that you show, what have you, I think that's more captivating than, like, because, hey, I'm the big guy in town and I sell the most houses. That works.
Nobody wants to hear that story.
Yeah, it works with some people.
There's fewer people that want to hear that story.
Thank you. Yeah.
Than the people that want to hear we started with one house. We started with a handful of houses. We started small, and we grew this business.
Right.
And we might not sell the most, but we care about what we sell. People want to hear that story.
Yeah, like there's a time when there was an agent discussing the whole family. They helped a family buy. The whole family abandoned, like all the relatives abandoned this family on moving day. And the agent was there with his brother to help move this family into their home. It was a lady and her baby. The husband was out of town. It was just like all odds stacked against them. And he finally, like had to put up aside all his appointments. And he's like, I just want to get you settled in. Is there anything else that I can do? I really, I've been pushing my appointments back. I got to get back to work. And she's like, can you put the crib together? And like, this agent wasn't particularly handy, but
Wow.
won him a lot of respect, won him a lot of admiration, obviously, and praise and appreciation from his client. And then it demonstrated, like this person is willing to go and do whatever it takes to take care of their clients. They put a crib together for a baby when they're not particularly skilled or confident enough to do that. So,
wow, that is incredible.
yeah, like, and you know what I mean? Like that, I think, at least demonstrates and should win the hearts of more people, as opposed to, above asking and,
Yeah. Yeah, see, that's interesting that you.
Everybody does that, and I'm getting sick of it, frankly.
Well, absolutely,
right?
And rightly so, because that story is a human story, and that story gives confidence in somebody that's buying or selling a home, in that sales agent. That story shows that person is going to go above and beyond for me if I need them.
Characteristics that I want in a person helping me make and move, do the most important thing. One of the most important things you're going to do, a milestone moment in your life. So that this was what I, from Doug Keeley's presentation, terrific presentation, and I'll share you the story that he shared, and it was respect to the debate of Tim Hortons versus Starbucks. And he's like, okay, I moved to Toronto in the Beaches neighborhood. A couple blocks away, there's a Starbucks, and usually in the evenings or before work, I would go to the Starbucks. And lovely barista there, Amanda, would be there. It was the first time I walked in, and she's like, "Hi guys, hey, what's your name?" I'm Amanda. What's your name? Hi, I'm Doug, and this is my wife Pam. Oh, okay. Hi guys, what would you like to order today? And I'll do the double pump, low fat milk, Americano, and my wife will have the like a totally custom drink, right? Like all the typical Starbucks. Right? And she's like, okay, that'll be terrific. Can I get you anything else? And they're like, no, not today, but it's like great to meet you. Well, maybe we'll see you again. Come back the next day. She's like, hey, you two look familiar. What is it again? And he's like, yeah, Doug and Pam. And he's like, hey, would you like your Doug and Pam order? Right? Like, so she's very endearing to them. And eventually got to remember their names, remember their order. And she didn't know who they were. She just knew they were regulars at the store, this Amanda barista. Years later, Doug is talking at a Starbucks convention. And he's like, you know what sets Starbucks apart from your McDonald's coffee and your Tim Hortons and this and that is there really is the personalization. And they use your name on your cup, and they get to know your order, and they make it for you just the way you want. And he was telling the story of like, for 12 years, I used to go to the Starbucks by my house, and Amanda would always be there, and she would call her drinks the Doug and the Pam. And, never forget that and whatever. And this is where he used the story to demonstrate how great their product was. And as he's meeting with the executives and the convention's winding down, this girl walks across the convention hall, and he sees her. They see each other. And she doesn't quite know if he remembers this, but that story that he told about Amanda, this was Amanda at the convention, came up to him at the end and said, I don't know if you remember me. I managed the Starbucks by the Beaches in Toronto years ago, and I was the one that you told that story when. He's like, yeah, of course I remember you. And it was like the most incredible coincidence. But yeah.
Oh, incredible. That's so cool.
For him to use that to demonstrate stories connecting with people, I thought that was amazing. So it came full circle.
Absolutely. I used to work for Starbucks, and I can speak to their training about, they call that creating the your second home. They train their baristas to treat their customers as though they're entering their second home, and it just speaks to that level of customer service. Like I said, every job is a service job. you're doing a job, you are in service to somebody else for something. And if you can tell a story that humanizes that job function, you have sold it. You've created something personal. You've created that narrative. You've opened it up for that person to feel like, yeah, this service is it for me. And for your that's your story. Like, you are able to do that with your job. You are able to personalize it. The small personal touch that would seem boring to somebody else. The Tim Hortons versus Starbucks. Yeah, I'm giving my clients Tim Hortons or Starbucks because they love Starbucks, not because I like one or the other, because I know that they do. That's how well I know my customer. Like, that's the service that people want, right? I mean, for most people, it doesn't matter, but to go the extra distance to find out what it is they like, not, intrusively or anything, just in conversation. It's like, oh, I heard that, they stopped at Starbucks last week to do something and they forgot something and blah, blah, blah. I know that my customer goes to Starbucks. I'm getting a Starbucks card. That's the next level. That's the next level of customer service that people want. And I think people deserve in this day and age. I think that's my 2 cents on that.
It has to evolve from just the McDonald's assembly line of make your order, pay, take your order, and
don't get me started on customer service. Don't get me started. Yes.
That was incredibly insightful and actually just hit me, create your second home. Like, that's literally what I'm doing. Create their first home, really, sometimes. But yeah, sometimes your shift goes from examining or exhibiting particular kind of care. And sometimes the longer you're in something, like, you come across people that just aren't appreciative, right? And I find that in different markets in real estate, that attitudes are different. And especially lately, like the younger attitudes, the expectations are different than they used to be. I'll say that.
I bet, yeah.
So things are shifting, and it's all understandable. But it's important for me, who has to be objective, never to forget what's at stake for them, because I'm not invested the same way they are. Obviously, it's their financial undertaking, not mine. So
that's right.
And it always leads with that, but it can be human too. Like, we all shouldn't forget, we're dealing with obviously sensitivity in people as well. So, I think that's where I have to do a better job, is make that experience exceptional, right?
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, you are coming at it from a perspective that the customer isn't. So you're able to see a lot more than they are. They're counting on you to build that narrative. You are actually in control of that narrative, because you know that the buyer's narrative is simple. I want the house that I want at the price that I want. That's their narrative. And your narrative is bigger and broader than that. It's like, well, I got to do all these things to get them.
More to it.
Yeah. It's like, man, I got to go above and beyond. And a lot of the times I know the customer doesn't understand what it is you're going through. It's like, oh, the agent doing what? It's like the agent is actually doing a lot of work for you. You just don't realize it. But that's the sign of a good agent. You're not supposed to.
Yeah. I
that's the story.
What to share with my clients, and a lot of the time I just share everything, because I want them to know all sides of the story and what it's taking, and the extra effort and the expertise and the experience that I've acquired along the way to know how to deal with certain situations. But sometimes I think it's just like they want what they want, so whatever I tell them just goes over their head, and it just becomes a just get it done kind of thing. And I'm like,
which is sad, because then that's reflective of the customer, not you, the agent. It's like, if people understood, it's like going to the grocery store and then arguing with the cashier about the items that you want. It's like you can't do that.
It has nothing to do with it. That's what I mean. Like today's consumer is a lot different than they used to be. So, anyways, just got to roll with it and change with the times. It's just something that I've noticed. But I hope there's something that I can do or implement to make it better for them. But it's certainly changed. I've been doing this long enough to see a evolution, and I don't know if that has to do with fewer. Probably it does. I'm alluding to it, like less face-to-face conversations about things, a lot of texting conversations, Zoom meetings at best. But it's easy to say things that are impactful that you wouldn't say otherwise in person. You know what I'm trying to say? Like it's easy to get away with it because you're not there.
That's right. You don't have the presence there. That's right.
So that's just part of, and maybe that's part of the story. Not that I care to share the inner workings, but then again, I think of one of my favorite TV personalities, Anthony Bourdain, and his life.
Oh,
he was complete obscurity until his mid 40s, and he was resigned to the fact that he's like, I'm working in the kitchen, I'm going to buy a deep fryer, I'm 44 years old, and I'm not going to see the world. And then he does Kitchen Confidential, and all of a sudden, he's this worldwide phenomenon.
Sensation. Absolutely.
Show, and he's such an eloquent writer and speaker, and all of a sudden his life does a complete 180, and he's traveling every country in the world. I'm fascinated with his interviews, and it started with him sharing what it's like in the kitchen, a band of misfits, that in an era where your parents wanted you to be an accountant, lawyer, or a doctor, and if you didn't make it and you were the artistic type, you got into the culinary scene. That was not for people who aspired to be in the kitchen.
That's right.
Secondary, like a realtor.
Well, here's the thing. I think if you
Anthony Bourdain of real estate,
the Anthony Bourdain of real estate is what you are. And if you start sharing,
end up with a cooking show and like travel.
If you share real estate from the perspective of it is a service, and this is the other side of that service, I think people are like, oh shit, okay, I get it, because a lot of people don't look at real estate as a service. It's real estate. We're talking about the property, but it's a service.
It's because you only use it a handful of times. A lot of people
don't know how to act.
Yeah, so they just like it's gonna be one and done, two and done, brief. You're out of my hair, I'm out of your hair.
Yeah.
They don't expect much. They expect the best service out of it, but like, in terms of long term, like whatever, dude.
Yeah, they're not invested in that long term relationship.
Yeah, and I have to, at the very least, cultivate some of that. And I try to keep in touch with people, like sending different things, newsletters, periodicals, and unfortunately, they don't get it either. Like they don't want it. And then I think to myself, well, okay, is that personal? Like they just don't want to hear from me. But then I'm like, they don't know the business model, and the business model today is to stay in touch and make some kind of effort. But that's where you have to have thick skin and not, take it personal. So it's interesting, and you learn a lot of these things on the job. But there's a lot of businesses out there that are dependent on your local community, and it's interesting. Like you see, because of what real estate agents get paid, no one feels sorry for us. Like,
wow, really?
You see these memes, and you're like, support local, hit up, take out and go use your groceries at mom and pops and get your restaurant. No one's saying go to your local realtor, like, oh, he's
You're right. Oh, damn. That's right. Just don't support.
It's like whatever.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. There should be more support.
This is a woe is me podcast.
Listen, I'm telling you, the insight you have, if you share that from a customer service perspective, people will listen because they don't see it like that. So you're giving them something that they're familiar with in a different way. So they'll be like, "Oh man, I was an ass in that deal. I should not have done that."
I mean, but they're not going to reach out now. Like, it's what's done is done. I think is the attitude, unfortunately. But
Well, even it,
me, but I'm just saying, like, every industry has its like background behind the scenes, right? So, that's kind of a glimpse into it. That is that, it's not always the agent that can be rude to the customer. The customer can give it back. It's because it's human nature. It's people, right? And
yes.
it's just
Oh my God, yeah.
yeah. Let's cut it at that because
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, we were gonna go in a different way, but I'm like, no. Let's just cut it at that.
I'd love to. Let's do it on another show. And I was sharing the triumphs and tribulations and horror stories. So let me come up with a couple because I have been thinking about doing that as a segment, and I think
Yes. Let's do that. Let us do that. Let's revisit that.
kitchen confidential version.
Yes.
But even real estate can have horror stories and triumphs as well. So, but I give credit and appreciation to Doug Keeley for sharing that inspiration, using stories to connect with your audience, and that'll be my story for tonight.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story. That was good.
So, thanks guys for listening. Appreciate it. The wonderful, my partner Christopher Bernard.
Oh, the incredible, insightful, always hilarious, inspirational, Neil Quinto. Thank you.
Thank you guys for listening. Stay tuned. We've got more content coming up. Take care. Yes, sir. Welcome back, everybody. What's going on?
What's happening, everyone? The incredible Neil Quinto.
The amazing, the incredible, the maniac, the brainiac, Christopher Bernard, Podcast and Chill Show.
The best podcast you've never heard until right now.
That's right. You're tuned in. You're locked in. Keep it locked. What's good, everybody? And I watched a terrific movie that I've seen a couple of years ago, Russell Crowe, Elizabeth Banks. It's called The Next 3 Days.
I remember the movie. I did not see it.
Okay. It's basically it's a crime thriller. Wife gets accused of a murder. Husband is a university professor, which is Russell Crowe. And they have a young child. She basically goes to jail on a murder charge of her coworker who she had a fight with earlier in the day. And as she leaves a scene, it appears that she's the one that murdered her coworker and drove off. And that another coworker shows up after all this ensues, and she's driving away, and he becomes the eyewitness, and he puts the pieces together, and then she becomes a suspect. But the story within that story is Russell Crowe is a very like meek, he's a likable guy, great dad, good husband, but not. He's a very ordinary guy, not capable of more than his job, so it seems. But the remainder of the movie, like what breaks out of this guy is he'll do anything for his family, and he plots an escape from a Pittsburgh jail, one of the toughest jails to break out of, to free his wife so that his family can be reunited. So it's a kind of a redemption story because she even gets frustrated with him. Like he tries to appeal, and it gets to the stage where this should go to the high courts, the Supreme Court, and his friend who's a lawyer it's not going to happen. And he tells his wife, and she's just like, it's a mess. And he's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And he studies criminals. He goes on YouTube and he figures out how to break into cars and bust doors open. And he contemplates robbing a bank, and he actually robs from a drug dealer, you know, to get money. So he creates this elaborate plan. It's an escape movie, but even though he's doing something illegal, it's Russell Crowe, and he's endearing. You root for him, right?
And you're like, all right.
Long story short, beautifully written, amazingly directed, and terrific roles. Russell Crowe, Elizabeth Banks, and the ensemble. But interestingly enough, the writer, who I want to give great praise to, is Canadian
Paul Haggis.
Yes.
That's incredible. Incredible.
So I thought you had mentioned in a previous podcast that you consulted with Mr. Haggis on script writing.
It was, I was doing a mentorship program. I was creating a mentorship program, and it was Canadian-based. I wanted a Canadian-based writer, so I reached out to Paul Haggis, and he was busy. So I got Stephen Pressfield instead, who did The Legend of Bagger Vance, and he gave me a whole bunch of his books and really cool stuff. But I really wanted Paul Haggis because I was a huge fan of Crash, and I know he did Facts of Life. That's where he got his start, Facts of Life, with Tootie. But he's done so much. Right there. Yeah, he's done a couple of Bond movies in the next few days, a couple of Bond movies. He even writes for Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Black Dumplings, which I watched, which was awesome.
$1 Million Baby, Crash.
Walker, Texas Ranger.
And I think he even did some Tracy Ullman show. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Yeah.
One Day at a Time, Richie Rich, Different Strokes.
Unbelievable.
And he's doing, is he doing Hunters? Is he?
I think that was just an ad, because I would.
That was an ad. Okay.
But the reason why it came up, coincidentally, because I was talking to you about it, I thought he was the one that you had an experience with in terms of reaching out. But I was watching a documentary on Scientology, and he was for a number of years a Scientologist.
Yes, he was. He was well into the mix there.
You do this, or like?
I knew he was into it, and I knew he was out of it, but I've not seen Going Clear.
Okay, this one's on YouTube. So, Going Clear, Scientology in the Prison of Belief. I just want you to see the beginning, because Canadian guy, Scientology, well accomplished,
Hollywood.
And then I thought you had actually had a relationship with him, like it's
I knew, let me just talk to Paul here. I didn't see what's up with him.
I'm like, Chris is gonna follow up for an interview. We're gonna.
I know, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're gonna talk about the Scientology roots. Oh my gosh! No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see what this is about.
Living in London, Ontario, Canada. I wanted to be a documentary filmmaker. And someone had told me about who said there's this cult in New York called Scientology, which I'd never heard of. And if you give them all your money, they'll make anything possible in your life. And
what?
Months later, I was walking down the street. This guy was there selling books. Then I realized they were all the same book, Dianetics, which again, I'd never heard of. He handed me one and asked me to look at it. I was talking, I wasn't really listening to him. As I opened the cover, and it said, stamped on the inside page, said Church of Scientology. And I said, take me there.
All right, here we go. I'm not a great multitasker, and if I feel like doing something.
The reason I showed you this guy, he's one of the actors in The Next 3 Days. So
he's a stuntman, isn't he?
No, he's one of the detectives, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. Hold on, there's a little bit more Paul.
I'm in love with this woman. It's impossible. I don't know what to do. I need some help. And he said, we can help you with that. I said, really? I said, yes. And I ran home and got her. And I said, we have to sign up for this. It sounds really good. It could, save our relationship. So we both signed up the next day to do a course, which I think cost $50. The thing that absolutely got me and stayed with me forever was the very first thing I read when you opened the course back, and it said, paraphrasing, don't believe any of this. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, discard it. I was troubled by the fact they called it a religion, but I figured, oh, it's some tax scam. It's fine with me. As long I don't really care about that as long as it works.
The first exercise after you do all this reading and stuff like that is this thing called OTTR0, which is basically...
Okay. So, wow, phenomenal. Really enjoyed this. Watched this last night. And it was just one of those suggestions that popped up. And I've just been reading about it ever since. And the basis of it is super interesting to me because it is a basis of self-improvement. A lot of their courses and technologies, as they call it. But eventually, as you get deeper, it becomes like one of these paid programs. Like, what do they call those online programs now?
Those
It's like a lot of self-help guys do stuff like this. Free seminar, sign up, do the
yeah. You find them in
move along. You're continually paying, so on.
Yes.
E-commerce stuff now, basically, and using that.
A scan, yeah.
So it sounded very much like that, and the more that I delved into it, I'm like, wow, like this is super fascinating. And the basics of it, like the Dianetics book, L. Ron Hubbard is the originator. He was a military man in the Navy. He was a commander of a vessel. He created a story that he was this war hero and he sunk ships, and when in fact he was shooting on like unidentified objects. He was created in his own war in his head. And then he created this aura or this story that he was a hero. And he, when he came back, moved back to Los Angeles after serving in the military, he was discharged. And he was a pulp fiction writer. Pulp fiction, it was named for the type of paper for which was used. So Pulp Fiction, everybody knows the movie. But Pulp Fiction writers were paid by the word, 1 penny per word. So they had to write a lot of words. And L. Ron Hubbard was a huge on science fiction. And I think he's in the Guinness Book of World Records for writing the most books published.
Really? I didn't know that.
That's where he got his start. He did science fiction, and then he did his Dianetics books in the 1950s, 60s, when Scientology started basically becoming a religion. And he had teamed up with this NASA scientist, and they were very much like about the Antichrist, just very strange lifestyle, but both, highly creative, highly intelligent, and a lot of the basis of his science fiction comic books or pulp fiction stories became the basis of the religion of Scientology. So later on, Haggis talks about it briefly in there, where he says, people use religion to just get the tax exemption. You hear about that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Giant battle. Because he was using his program, people pay to play, so to speak, pay for enlightenment. And he was taking this sum of money where eventually he owed more in tax than the revenue and the savings that they had. And they were accumulating real estate holdings tax-free and so on. And all the way up until past his death, the IRS came heavy down against Scientology. But long story short, Scientology was able to obtain that, whatever that tax exemption was, and all of their liabilities were eliminated. Because the Church of Scientology has been known to be like, they would investigate IRS auditors, etc., and they overnight created like thousands and thousands of lawsuits, not just against the IRS, but against their auditors as well, and just created this like logistical nightmare. And basically, it sounded like from this documentary that was the premise for which they were able to get their tax liabilities eliminated. Wow. Like, we'll eliminate all these, what do you call it, lawsuits overnight if you just, if you forget about our tax owing. That was crazy story.
Wow, that's so crazy.
They coupled that up with, they even call it the Celebrity Center. They bought an old church in Los Angeles, and then they started to congregate, celebrities. They were literally recruiting, the hippest of the coolest,
yes,
the most famous celebrities, and John Travolta in the height of, or the upswing of his fame, became the face of it, and then eventually Tom Cruise and so on. So fascinating.
Yes,
it's such a fascinating documentary.
Yes, they touched on that part about getting celebrities. I watched my Scientology movie, also on Netflix, and they talked about L. Ron Hubbard's successor and his strategy for getting more celebrities into their whole thing, and it was like, wow, it was eye-opening because I didn't know that much about Scientology going in. I was a little nervous about, like, okay, what is this about? What am I going to see? And then it was just kind of like interesting. It was fascinating. I was fascinated by it. I was like, this is weird.
That one, I've got to find that one. But just to sum up for Paul Haggis, so he moved to Los Angeles. He aspired to be a writer. His wife was very much involved with Scientology. When they were fighting the IRS, they put a lot of pressure on these people with money to donate. And he said he donated in the upwards of $250,000 to help them in the cause. And then where it got strange for him is the certain levels of enlightenment and education that you receive, like as you get audited, is what they say, right? Like, did you understand that? Did you catch that? The documentary is, you'll have basically, so once you get to the third level, they give you an explanation of the origin of everything that they're trying to achieve, and basically the origin of the Scientology. And it is based on, like, science fiction. There was a planet of people who dressed and acted and transported very much like humans, but they had their issues or what have you. And the powers that be took all the bad ones, put them in volcanoes, and dropped atomic bombs on them to expire these people, but their spirits still lived, and then those spirits go into human-born babies, and then that's what they call engrams or something like that. Like, these are the bad skills and the bad memories and things like that you don't want. And the basis of the Scientology is to free your mind of these engrams so that you become a clear individual. Someone who can operate and live a life free of exactly that, right? Like, but when that was exposed and explained to Paul Haggis, he was like, what is this? This is so, and he's a writer.
Yes, I know. But I always wondered watching these things. I'm like, okay, why did they target celebrities? Like, why that? And why did celebrities believe it? I always wondered, like, so Paul Haggis, I wondered, like, why, and I get it. I'm like, okay, I get what they're saying. The words they use are weird. It's, to me, anyway, in my personal opinion, I'm like, that's a weird. I get what you're going for. You're trying to live this, they say, clear life, but it's people. I've heard it said that, like, your subconscious blocks. Basically, that's right. You're trying to get rid of these subconscious blocks, right, in your pursuit of whatever it is, and I get what Scientology is trying to do. I just didn't understand. I'm like, you're an intelligent person. How could you believe that? But I understand it because it's like this weird they lead with, you can have anything you want, that desire. You just need to do this. And I mean, that's not.
Stick with it till you get there.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about being motivated to follow your dreams, and it doesn't include paying somebody a whole bunch of money. Like that's
Yeah.
like,
I don't believe that he actually believed in that. And in fact, he explained the reason why he left, and that is because he's got two female daughters that are lesbian. They're gay, and the church just does not support or condone any gay behavior or just a gay lifestyle. So he's like, I can't, in good conscience, stay with a religion that won't accept my children, right? So that, and hence that's why he left. He wrote a letter, and then he said it was in the press, and I think that was it. They didn't really show much after that, and it was all over the world. Like there was 600 publications or newspapers that like Paul Haggis, leaves the church, and they probably cooked up a story or whatever.
yes.
Super interesting. I don't think he believed that the story of the origin of Scientology or the premise of it, but it sounds like they give a lot of pressure to donate. There's a lot of pressure to stay. There's a lot of pressure to stick with it, because in doing so, like you said, you're taught how to remove those blocks, but in doing so, you expose yourself and you share like your deepest, darkest secrets. And I think that's what they held a lot of these participants. They held them hostage because of that, right? Like, did they do something to Travolta? Yeah, I think they did, because I forgot what happened.
Is Travolta still part of the church?
He is, I believe.
He is?
There was a time when he was trying to leave, and he was, I guess, blackmailed, so to speak, to staying, because, in these audits, they keep copious notes, detailed notes. And it sounded like they threatened to expose all his deepest, darkest secrets. If Leah Remini, actress from The King of Queens, she was very outspoken. She had a show and everything. She went on the Joe Rogan Experience to share exactly that. Tom Cruise, they were talking about his relationship with Nicole Kidman.
Really?
Yeah, because Nicole Kidman's father was an attorney or something, very outspoken. Like he just like, he was a threat. And that the guy in the documentary you're talking about, the current head of the religion, David Miscavige, he saw Nicole Kidman's dad as a threat. And when they were filming Eyes Wide Shut, it was in London or something like that, and Miscavige was getting really close with Cruise, but then they weren't consulting or seeing each other as much when he was doing that film, the Stanley Kubrick film.
Oh.
Becoming increasingly threatened by, Nicole Kidman and her influence. And I think it sounded from the documentary is what they wanted to stage certain things to get them to divorce.
Wow.
Yeah. So they used private investigators and tapped her phone, and oh my God. And they created stories to have the children turn on Nicole Kidman, the adopted children. I think they had 2 adopted children or something like that. Oh yeah. So that's what that's.
Oh dear. Oh wow.
So that's not what you watched, is it?
No, the movie that I watched was about a guy who was speaking to people that were excommunicated from the Church of Scientology, and he wanted to piece together an incident that was reported to have happened.
Oh, okay.
And and then he goes through, in speaking with the people that used to be part of the church, he reconstructs it with using actors, something that happened at the church, and then he gets the people from the church involved with the actors, and then an interesting thing starts to happen. They pull back the layers of some of their religious practices, they go to some of the locations to try to gain access with the people that used to be from the church, and then they run into some legal troubles, and then the church starts to find ways to try to shut down the documentary filmmakers. It's like,
yeah, no, and that's certainly what the YouTube documentary that I watched illustrates, is the that far-reaching hand of theirs, that invisible hand, and they'll go to any measure. Like, they beat the IRS. Like, they hire personal investigators, and it's kind of like Fight Club. They had membership everywhere, and they colluded to shut down the credit card companies. It's like,
wow, I had no idea. I had no idea.
Super, because I to be frank, I was quite interested in like the techniques or the technologies that they're talking about, right? Like, well, it sounds super interesting. Removing blocks in your life. So what technologies would this be? What I'm like, okay, and up until that point, to where you get to the science fiction and you hear about the origin and so on, I'm like, I'm not really. That doesn't interest me whatsoever.
Yeah.
That seems to be the allure, I think, for obviously celebrities are people who want that attention and want that success and so on. So of course they'd be attracted. Some would be attracted to those methods. But I suppose, like I said, like, if they had a hand in you achieving a certain something, and you were required to, maintain allegiance or some kind of financial, and that's fine. People support their church with finance, but it sounded like they were like being, next to forced to.
I think that's
crazy.
It becomes a thing where that becomes your family, right? And so I think they don't want to go against the family. Mm-hmm. That's your community, your family, your identity, and now it's like, how do you go against that?
Yeah, and they know all these things about you now, right?
Exactly. It would be like going against your family, and your family knows all the things you don't want other people to know. It's like, oh crap.
So that reminds me of Louis C.K. Sincerely. They added the stand-up comedy of his on the IPTV, so I watched it.
Oh, you watched it?
He's like, oh, you want to talk about it? Yeah.
Like.
No. This is him to the crowd. We are gonna.
Oh, I totally did. Like, yeah.
He's like, oh, so okay, you want to talk? He's like, everybody has their thing, right? Like, you have your thing. I don't know what that thing is. Well, I have my thing. Everybody knows what that is.
Obama knows.
I read something like, oh dear God. I was in an airport, and in an Italian airport, and this boy goes, oh, mama, he's in the check off. Oh, yeah, that's me. So, oh, man. And he goes on, and, obviously not funny for the harassment part. And he goes on to explain that. And he's like, if you ever, ask to do something and they say yes, still don't do it.
Still don't do it. That's right. Still do not. Just say no. Just say no. Just say no.
But it was interesting to see how you turn something of major tension to something that can be, you can, create a sense of humor, a joke concerning it, right? So, and that's what true stand-ups do, right? Like, they can turn the most ridiculous scenario into something funny, or even the most egregious, you just
the egregious punchlines into like, yeah.
Anyways, I this show is about pushing our boundaries, and sometimes that's talking about stuff that's not exactly comfortable, but I wanted to talk about it because it came up and I watched it, and the whole tie-in to the movie that I watched, and Paul Haggis was in Scientology, and
yeah.
What is,
I gotta check it out actually. Now I'm curious.
And actually, there's an audio book, the one that I sent you, that is basically the book version of that movie.
Oh, okay.
Super interesting. Super interesting. Because you see celebrities, Kirstie Alley, who else? Like this, I should find a list. Like Tom Cruise, Leah Remini.
Yes. There's actually a lot more than. Oh, we put up a list. Perfect.
I'm gonna get the list here. Hold on. This aside.
Celebrity signed. Oh, 2020. I guess you need an updated list.
Here we go. Travolta, Jenna Elfman, BC,
Giovanni BC. Huh. Juliette Lewis.
Is this a good one? This is.
I didn't know that.
Catherine Bell.
Catherine Bell.
David Campbell.
Nancy Cartwright. Huh.
Chick Corea, Tom Cruise, Sky Deaton.
Dougie Fresh? No way.
Dougie Fresh. Yeah, but look at the actors and actresses. Danny Masterson.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had heard this. There's a lot of guys in business. Oh, Laura Prepon, she's in Orange is the New Black. Kelly Preston, wasn't she married to yeah, she's married to Travolta.
Yes. That's right. Who there? Okay.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, no, I'd heard there's a lot of businessmen, like businessmen and women. It's not known, but like very successful ones. I'm like, what is going on here? What's the secret? Anyways, yeah. Oh, Charles Manson.
What? Wow.
And actually, Miscavige's father and his niece, they left the.
Oh, they did. Okay.
He has a podcast, I believe, actually. Mimi Rogers, that she was married to Tom Cruise before.
What?
Yeah. Sonny Bono. Isaac Hayes.
Wow, Isaac Hayes.
It's interesting just looking at the list.
What?
So yeah, I don't know if you end up with that. That was the rabbit hole for sure.
Oh my gosh! Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
When we first did the show at the studio with Brian, I had made a joke and it kind of got quiet in the room about Scientology. And I'm like, oh, did I step on some toes here or something?
Oh,
I asked you, I'm like, wait a minute.
is he a Scientologist? Oh, what was the joke?
I just can't remember it. It got quiet. I'm like,
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
yeah. Maybe it's something you can't admit anyway. So, and it doesn't even matter. But I just like.
Was it Isaac Hayes once at one time? I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Even like a little like giggle, and I didn't even get that. I'm like, oh jeez.
Oh, I must have really offended him. He's a Scientologist. I know he is. He's into that stuff. His eyes are wide shut.
I wonder what the next 3 days will be like.
Well, those are the facts of life. So just going to take it one day at a time. I don't know.
Oh man, too funny. Anyways, I wanted to share, and I thought there was more there. Paul Haggis, and then I'm like, if Chris is, then he's gonna tell me a lot tonight. So
Maybe like, I've got news.
So nonetheless, anyways, whatever it is you believe in, you listen to.
Absolutely. You know what? I just realized, like, we all of us believe in weird shit. Even like atheists who are like, nah, there's nothing. That is, if you think about it, kind of weird. So there's like, so nothing. There was nothing going on before, and there's nothing happening after you. Like yeah. Like that's weird too. There's something going on. Not everybody has all the answers.
Yeah, you can.
And everybody believes in weird shit.
Yeah, you can poke holes in anything, and there's a lot of cultural stuff too, like wet markets and eating different animals in China.
Yeah.
Or, in the northern countries, like they eat blubber, like seal. You know what I mean? Like there's and that's certainly with things like foods. And it's very normal to them because it's their culture. So like,
exactly.
Religion, sometimes it's just a circumstance of where you're born.
Oh, that's a lot of it is, and it's
Bible, Catholicism, Christianity, like Buddhism, like whatever, Hinduism. It can just have to do with geography.
It is exactly, and it's like at the end of the day, you've got science, you've got religion. Both created by humans, so it is in the interest of humans. So is one better than the other? No, because they both serve a purpose that is exclusive to humans, really. So it's like
exist, right? Like one can pick up where the other lacks.
Yeah,
so to speak. So,
you need both. Yeah,
I think so. So anyway, whatever it is, hopefully you come back and keep listening. I just thought the whole documentary it shed some interesting light. But then again, documentaries they can be one-sided, and they are direct, like they're trying to direct you to a certain.
That's right. Grain of salt. I mean, to those people that believe in Scientology and that sort of thing, that's great. It's helping you to get to where you want to be in life, and that's for you. And those who don't, believe in whatever, that's as long as you are doing you and you ain't harming anyone else, then whatever, go for it.
In the Catholic Church, you'd want to talk about the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, the wine and the bread, like that. So someone can be what are they called? Cannibalistic too, right? Like it's just the outlook, like, and it's for a lack of knowledge and understanding, right? Usually you can hate things you don't understand.
Exactly.
You can jump to conclusions that you don't understand either. But
exactly,
symbolism, it doesn't have to be real.
No.
Talking about like the origins and the sci-fi origins of certain things. Like some people, you choose to adopt the beliefs based on what suits you best. So, and I respect that, right? Because
absolutely,
I certainly had times where I didn't know what to believe, and I not envied, but like I respect people that do have firm beliefs and are, what's the word, like very charismatic. It's not even like firm. What's the word I'm looking for? Firm believer, strong believer.
That they're confident.
Yeah.
They have the confidence. Yeah, like it's
in terms of spirituality, because I've certainly I still to this day have challenges deciding
what it is to believe, right?
Yeah, like so, because I thought I had that, and then certain things happen in your life and you revisit it. I think we've talked about it on the show.
That's it. And it's like when you're starting out and you're learning about whatever religion you happen to be closest to, because your parents were in it or it was introduced to you and whatever.
That's it.
You have to. It's like reading a book for the first time. You're reading a kid's book. You're reading it as a kid, but as an adult, you read a kid's book, you're going to notice different things, right? So that's why your beliefs change, your spiritual beliefs change, because your life experience is changing how you're looking at your own life. Exactly. And so that spirituality you were given in the beginning, it's like, well, it has changed. It has evolved. It's something else now. But if you don't take the time to look through that new lens, dust it off and clean it and kind of repurpose it, then you get
When you're young, if you're baptized as a baby, you did not choose. You
Yeah.
consciously choose that, right? So it's interesting. And where in a world like it's so like my group against your group, maybe that's part of the reason I don't identify necessarily with one or the other because
Because it's
divisive.
exactly. Exactly. That's it. And it's like, that's not a good place to start. It's like you need something that's a little more inclusive, right?
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. Well, and that's I think that's part of the human struggle. Like it's like how do we as a humanity stay connected but still have individuality and beliefs and culture, right? It's now I feel like it's more politics than religion, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see as we go on. It's like media and social just amplify that, but always has. Well,
Yes, and it always will. That is the function of that thing.
yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Again, we uncovered some amazing conversations.
Always magic.
Where people don't or hesitant or reluctant to voice. So you guys share with us what your thoughts are with respect to that, because obviously there some of our listeners are and have direction and faith, and others don't, and we're not afraid to talk about it because I think to having a general understanding is what is important with respect to having an opinion.
Absolutely.
Like I said, is that ignorance about religion is what creates the divide, I believe. So
I think, well, just to go back about the narrative part, and that's key because if you eat, and you put it so perfectly, every job is a service job. So the job of the pastor, the job of religion itself, the job of the priest is to give you a narrative that is supposed to help you, the individual, but at the same time serve a collective. That's almost impossible
yeah,
with respect to understanding the language, understanding the symbolism, and understanding where you are with it all. Because it's like you're given a narrative at a young age, you don't really care for it or understand its complexity or fullness until you've had life experience, and then re-examining that narrative from an adult perspective. It's like, well, what should I believe? Like, what is actually true? Like, what
yeah,
you kind of start from ground zero again, and you got to go, well, what's helping me? What's helping guiding me to a better situation, a better feeling place, a better thought? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go with that. And you keep doing that one step at a time. And you literally claw your way back to a more grounded spirituality than what you were given. Because the times have evolved, which means the understanding has to evolve with it. So your parents, they gave you what was necessary in that day. Now it's your job to go, okay, times have changed. I got to update the narrative. Here's what it means. Here's, the blood of Christ isn't the literal blood. Here's what it also means. I can get the physical story. I can get the spiritual story. I can get the mental, the psychological aspect of that story. And that's where the other layers open up to you with life experience,
mm-hmm.
All a journey.
It's something I want to revisit because we need more time. You could talk about this for on and on, but I want to share with my personal experience is that I felt, and this is what we'll carry on in this conversation another time, but is you hit it on the head. You evolve as a person, but sometimes the material and the lectures and the readings and the scripture and the doctrine on the basis of your religion doesn't change at all.
Yeah, and it's like,
evolve, but the lessons don't And that's, I feel like that's what creates a disconnect, and where even the church and the teachings can
Yeah.
be out of touch with their congregation, with their followers, what have you. And then I hear about other churches and they're more contemporary, and it's like, wow, like, so I think there is a longing for me to feel like I belong to something like that.
Yes.
And I find that interesting when I talk to others and their experience with their church. And it's, like I said, is more contemporary with their lessons and the time. I'm like, I think I'm more suited to that now than when I was younger, growing up as a Roman Catholic. And it's unfortunate, but it's like everybody's growing, and
That's right.
even sports are guilty of being traditionalists and not changing with the times. That's why I think a sport like baseball suffers. And I'm not trying to create a comparison of sport and religion, but when people evolve, but that subject matter doesn't, it's hard for them to stay engaged if they don't.
That's absolutely.
That's just want to touch on. I don't want to get into that conversation now.
That's a great conversation. We'll leave it there, but that's a great. The engagement is huge.
Something on that. I could tell. What would you want to say?
Well, no, I'm glad you said engagement. That is huge, because there is a disconnect, and because of the disconnect, sort of with the church and with the scripture and all that sort of thing, there's also the disconnect with the self, because that material is not being consumed anymore. So it's like, okay, there is something there, but without exploration, without the curiosity, without the engagement, there's a piece of the self that's just kind of lost. It's like, oh, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. It's sad. It's actually really sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe there is something out there for everybody.
Absolutely.
Obviously, based on what your desire, and what you need spiritually. So, yeah, well, let's leave it at that. I think this is an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Going somewhere that not everybody wants to go, but, having real human conversations about it, because I think they are issues in the world.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, it's very divisive. It can be divisive, but that's not the approach we're taking. This is a good.
No, exactly. That is not the approach to wholeness and togetherness. It can't be divisive.
It might be something we can't even answer, but nonetheless, I think it.
Absolutely. And part of it is accepting that I'm not going to have all the answers, and that's okay. Like, I don't need them. I don't need all the answers. Just need to know where I'm going.
That's it. Wow. Well said. Beautifully said. Oh my gosh. Your presence. You make me a believer.
Amazing. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, my co-host, the wonderful, the amazing, the inspirational, the motivational, Christopher Bernard. Thank you very much, brother. Appreciate it.
Oh, brother, no, the pleasure's all mine. It is such a pleasure to sit here and have these conversations with you, because where else in the world am I going to have the time and space to have this conversation? So thank you so very much. The amazing, the funny, intelligent, witty, insightful Neil Quinto, the nicest man you will ever meet. Neil Quinto, thank you.
And this has been another episode of Podcast and Chill. What more can you ask for?
The best podcast you have never heard about until right now, and you're going to share it. You are going to share it because you got something from it today. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Salute you. Love you guys. Thanks for listening.
Love you. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care. Good night, everyone.